Welcome back to English Grammar. This course will discuss the agreement of pronoun and antecedent. So, first of all, a pronoun. Let me remind you what part of speech the pronoun is. The pronoun is any word that replaces a noun, which is a person, place, or thing. So he, she, it, those kinds of words in English grammar are called pronouns. So now we're talking about the agreement between pronouns and an antecedent. Okay, so a pronoun agrees with its antecedent. Now remember from our last courses, our last couple of courses, we've been talking about this word agreement. And it's not that they disagree or that there's an argument going on between words, but rather an agreement, meaning that it matches something else in the sentence. In this particular case, when I use the word agreement, a pronoun agrees with its antecedent in number and gender. Number meaning that whether or not it is singular or plural, and gender, remembering that it could be masculine, it can be feminine, so it could be the pronoun could be male or female, or it could be neuter, which is a third category in the gender category, meaning that it could be an it. So it's neither masculine or feminine descriptive. Okay, so in the gender category, we're talking masculine, feminine, or neuter. So he, she, or it. In the number category, we're talking about singular or plural, one or many. So let's talk about how a pronoun agrees with its antecedent in number and gender. So the antecedent, a really fancy word, of a pronoun is the word to which the pronoun refers. Okay, so the pronoun is then talking about an antecedent. So as a rule, the pronoun is singular when the antecedent is singular and plural when the antecedent is plural. So in this particular case, they must match. They must agree. And so that's all we're really talking about. This is going to be a really short lesson, so just hang with me. This is a quick lesson to learn because really we've already been discussing the agreement between subject and verb, and now we're talking about the agreement between pronouns and antecedents, and this is simple. So when we're talking about singular, the antecedent is singular, so then the pronoun is singular. And then if the antecedent is plural, the pronoun will be plural. So it's not a complicated set of rules to remember. The pronoun is masculine. Okay, so take a moment, think back to our lesson when we were looking at the part of speech in English grammar known as pronouns. Look back on your notes. And if you'll recall, I gave you a whole list of these pronouns so you could become familiar with what I was talking about when I spoke of the word pronoun, which, by the way, remember that the part of speech abbreviation is pro with an N, so prone. All right, so that is the part of speech. But let's look at he, him, and his. These are three examples of masculine pronouns. And so we will use these kind of masculine pronouns when the antecedent is masculine. Now, remember that the antecedent is really the word which the pronoun is referring to. So really, antecedent, you could just kind of take that big, chunky English word and chunk it out and just remember, let me read it without that word in, and just adding the description to it. The pronoun is male or masculine when the word which the pronoun refers to is male or masculine. Okay? In the same way, it's female. So it's she, her, or hers when the antecedent is feminine or female. And again, neuter, it or its, when the antecedent is neither. When the description. Remember that pronouns, my name is Bo. But then if you were to use a pronoun for his name is Bo. His being the pronoun for me. His name is Bo. Or he is Bo. You would not use she is Bo because I'm not a female. And you wouldn't use it is Bo because unless you were talking about it is Bo who took the trash out. Well, that's great. Those are specific uses of the pronoun, but they must match the antecedent. So in which case, if he is Bo, well, that is because he is the pronoun that would be used with the masculine antecedent, which he refers to my first name, which is Bo. So you understand. So there has to be an agreement between the gender and the number. And because there's only one of me, his friends are wild. Well, obviously, friends being plural, and again, being my friends, I'm a man, I'm a masculine in nature. His friends are wild. So again, the antecedent, the words which his is referring to, friends is plural, so therefore you use a plural pronoun. Really simple stuff, not hard to understand at all if you stop and think about it. This kind of agreement is agreement in gender. She should have done it herself. Well, she is the pronoun, and what is it referring to? She is referring to herself, also a pronoun, and in this particular case, now we have another pronoun. Now you see how all these pronouns kind of come together. How all these pronouns kind of come together is it's talking about one person, she and herself being one female, and she being the same female. So it's also talking about each other. So they're in agreement in gender, in the sense that they're both female. So she's not going to turn into a he in the end of a sentence, or himself. She should have done it himself. Well, that would be incorrect because himself is referring to a man when we know clearly that this sentence is speaking specifically about a female. So she should have done it herself. So they have to agree in agreement and gender. They have to be matching in gender. Okay, so when you start reading, look for the way these patterns work. Look for the way that other writers use these pronouns in agreement with antecedents to what it refers to. She refers to herself in this particular case. So, and what she should have done it herself. Well, she and herself are referring to each other, so they match in gender. In the same way, Keith hit his first home run today. This sentence is actually missing hit, H-I-T. I'm sorry about that. So I'm a baseball fan. I love good old-fashioned baseball. You hit the ball, you catch the ball, and you run the bases. I mean, all good stuff. Lots and lots of rules, just like in English, but lots and lots of good, solid fun. And so this is a reference to baseball. And home run is when you hit the ball and you either knock it out of the park or you hit it all the way to the back fence in the baseball diamond, and then you run the bases, which make a big triangle all the way home. So you have to go first, second, third, and all the way home. Well, again, Keith being a masculine. By the way, my middle name is Keith. So Keith is a man, and so his pronoun also has to be masculine as well. So his is referring back to his name, Keith. Keith hit his first home run today. So, The fishers. Now, watch this. Completely different. Completely different. Okay? The fishers return from their vacation trip. Okay, so looking at this, the fishers is the noun. There is the pronoun. Okay? The pronoun is referring back to the subject or back to the name. Now, you're going, well, how is there? How does there work? Well, there, in this particular case, is a neuter pronoun. And it's referring back to the subject, which is the fishers, which is actually like a last name, like the Brewers return from their vacation trip. The Oliveras return from Brazil, from their vacation. Okay, but it's also referring to their vacation trip. There is referring to what they did, also referring back to their name. The company, in the same way, the company advertises its. Now, obviously, the company does not have a masculine or a feminine. The company is an abstract thing. It is a thing. The company is a thing, okay? But it's not a specific person or a specific thing. It's not a person, it's a place. It's not a person, place, or thing. It's a thing. So it naturally gets this word "its" as the pronoun, okay? Because the company is neither masculine or feminine. It's not a male company. It's not a female company. It's a neuter. It's neither masculine or feminine, but it has to have a description in the pronoun category. So you would use a neuter pronoun, which is its. It's really not complicated, okay? But its always refers back to the company, because as you read it, it makes perfectly good sense. The company advertises its products. Now, it could also be talking about products, because who owns the products? It's or the company. So you see how this all kind of combines. Words are really fun to play with. This is like gigantic jigsaw puzzles. You just kind of piece things together. And as we start looking toward English composition, which I know several of you are probably dying to figure out what in the world English grammar, what is the end result of English grammar? Well, we're going to start talking about that in the next couple of lessons as we start exploring the introductions to English composition, because after all, English grammar as a whole is not the end all of the use of this language. It's just teaching you the ins and outs, the rules and regulations, and of good and bad grammar within the English language, which is not hard to learn all these rules, but the familiarity of learning how these rules interact with each other and how they place on a page as you're reading, writing, and speaking in English, communicating in English. Once you learn all these wonderful rules, as you spread the gospel, as you preach and teach in Jesus' name, and you use English as a part of your language, as part of your education here in this institution, you will develop skills that are universal around the world, because English is one of those languages that are used in the business world, used in the church, used in private community, and used globally around the world. And so these skill sets will help you not only in English grammar, but they hopefully will help you in your own heart language. As you reconsider the things, the rules and ins and outs, you're going to realize that so much of these rules and regulations that we're using in English grammar really can apply to what you're using in your own language. You just probably haven't stopped and thought about it in a long time. Just like I don't sit around and think about nouns and pronouns on a regular basis. I use them all the time in my reading and my writing, and I recognize them. But I don't sit around and go, "Oh, that pronoun is connected to that noun or to that antecedent." No, it in this particular case, it's is referring to its product. So it's referring to the products that are sold on television or that are advertised. So you see, this is a pronoun with an antecedent. It's also referring back to the company. So you see, one word has so much connection. It's not there by mishap. It's there with a specific pattern. The words each, either, neither, one, everyone, everybody, no one, nobody, anyone, anybody, someone, somebody, are referred to by a singular pronoun. Okay, so this category right here refers to all of these words, to all of them. This one category right there at the bottom, he, him, his, she, her, hers, it, its, refers to any one of those particular words above. So it's really interesting how a pronoun in its singular form can refer to a lot of different words. And so it's fun as you learn how to use this. These are singular. The antecedent, the use of a phrase after the antecedent does not change the number of the antecedent. Okay? So if you're reading along and you find the subject or the pronoun and the antecedent, and then after the antecedent comes this long phrase of something else, you have to remember it does not change the number of the antecedent, meaning it doesn't change whether it's singular or plural. If the pronoun and the antecedent are singular or plural, then they are in its own category, and everything that goes on beyond is something completely different to be dealt with, completely different. But it does not change the antecedent or the pronoun. So here's an example. Each of the women designed her own pattern. Okay? So women is a plural. Plural, meaning more than one woman, more than one female, okay? Designed her own pattern. Well, her is referring back to woman, obviously. It's the pronoun. And what is her referring to? Well, it's referring to the pattern, but it's really referring to each. Each designed, you could just cut out the woman, each of the woman. Each designed her own pattern. Does it still make sense? Absolutely. Why? Because her is the pronoun of this particular antecedent. And antecedent doesn't mean that it comes after. And her own pattern, while that's singular, we also see that her and each is speaking of one woman or of multiple women, but it's also speaking to this woman, to this group of women. Each of the women designed her own pattern, but you could easily remove of the women and just have each designed her own pattern. It makes perfectly good sense. Let's look at another one. Neither of the men, again, that is a plural noun. Neither of the men left his coat on the seat. Well, neither. Neither is this wonderful singular antecedent, and his is a singular pronoun. Pronoun neither left his coat on the seat. It's easy. Now, obviously, with the addition of the men in there, you have to understand that they're adding these words to give further explanation, further meaning, further clarity, further this, but it's not necessary in the English language to have all these extra words. You could simply say neither left his coat on the seat. It makes perfectly good sense because you know that it was a man neither, it gives us some definition to the word, but his being a singular pronoun. All right, so singular pronoun. So you have to understand that you don't have to have all these extra words. Neither left his coat on the seat. Okay? So it's all written there. One of the girls took her umbrella with her. Fun. Okay, so again, we have girls, which is our noun. Okay? It is also a plural noun, meaning that there's more than one girl in this category. How do I know that it's plural? Because it has that beautiful little S right there on the end. That little S tells me that there is more than one. It's not the girl, because then one of the girls would not make sense. It would just be the girl took her umbrella with her. Well, that would be a singular noun. But in this particular case, we're isolating one of the girls. One of the girls in that crowd, one of the girls took her umbrella with her. So we have this plural noun right here, and we have this pronoun, and now this one gives to there, and this one is talking about one of the girls and taking it with her. All right, so you see how easy this is? Two or more singular antecedents joined by or nor. Again, there's that funny English word, nor. We don't understand how it works exactly, but we know that we don't use nor very often. But we know that in formal English, nor is also considered part of or, part of these conjoining words to help point out two or more singular antecedents, or two or more singular words that are referred to by a singular pronoun should be referred to by a singular. So the singular, they have to be the same number when they refer to each other. So the pronoun has to be singular, and so do the antecedents. They have to be. But they can be conjoined. They can be joined by or nor. Neither Sue nor Maria. Now look at this. This is back to a compound subject, because here we go. We have Sue and we have Maria. They're joined by this beautiful word right here, nor. Neither Sue nor Maria left her books on her desk. Now, her refers back to Sue and Maria, and this her refers back to Sue and Maria. Neither Sue nor Maria. Now, understand that Sue and Maria are both singular subjects. Okay? And so the pronouns themselves have to be singular also. Okay? So the antecedent is the pronoun which refers to, and the antecedent is the words that refer to the pronoun. Okay? So, left her books on her desk. So the desk is really the antecedent that refers to her, which all refers to Sue nor Maria. Because whose desk is it? Sue and Maria. They did not leave their books on their desk. Okay? Two or more antecedents joined by and, there's that and conjunction, should be referred to by a plural pronoun. Okay, so remember the pronouns have to be plural. If there are two or more antecedents, two or more words joined by and, they should be referred to by a plural pronoun. Sue and Maria. Okay, well look, that conjunction right there puts Sue and Maria together. Okay, they're together, and that's your antecedent presented their reports. Well, who are there? And by the way, there is a plural referring to more than one. If it were just one person, Sue presented her report. Okay? But there is plural. Okay? And there is a plural pronoun, and it's referring back to Sue and Maria, and it's also referring to their reports, which, by the way, there are more than one report because of the S right there. So we have fantastic opportunities here. It's super simple. You look for these key words like or and nor and you're going to find that the words that are compound together, that are brought together by these conjunctions, are also indicative of the pronoun that matches those antecedents. So the antecedent is simply the words that are referred to by that pronoun. So there refers to Sue and Maria, but it could also be talking about the reports. The rules for agreement of pronoun and antecedent show variation between formal and informal uses. Remember, formal is more like what you do when you're writing something very serious. And I'm not talking about serious in nature like a deeply concerned, but formal in the sense that you're following the rules of English grammar very strictly, while informal is more like what you do when you're writing your mother or your father a letter or an email, or you're texting, or you're doing any of those things, and you are simply using language that follows meaning rather than the strict grammatical agreements. For example, shortcuts, BTW in English. When you're using, these cutesy little things, LOL, laugh out loud, or BTW, which is by the way. Those are not formal uses of words in the English grammar, but we do understand what they're meaning. We understand the meaning rather than the strict grammatical agreement. So in the same way, we use these agreements of pronouns and antecedents to show variation. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let me show you an example. So formal, again, talking about formal and informal. Okay, so formal real quick is neither of the women carried her purse with her. Okay, so really look at that. We have woman, we have her, and her. Okay, this is an extremely formal way to say it. Okay, but look at all the uses. We have what? Two pronouns in this sentence. Very, very crazy. This is perfectly sound way to write. Neither of the women carried her purse with her. Okay, that's an extremely formal, strict adherence to the pronoun and antecedent rule. Great, all good and fine. But let's look at a more informal way to write the exact same thing. Neither of the women carried their purses with them. Well, that's kind of right. And that's definitely less formal in their occasion. This is the formal way of doing things is an extremely strict adherence to the rules between the pronoun and the antecedent. Her and her are perfect examples of her purse and her purse. It's talking about that. Neither of the women, and talking about the women, and neither of them. All of these things are strict adherence, but here we are talking about a more informal use of the exact same thing. And this is more like what you would, this might be what you text one of your friends. Neither of the women carried their purses with them. Well, that to me sounds more natural, and that's probably more the way I would say it, but that is certainly not the way if we're writing a serious article or we're writing a serious composition or an essay. That is definitely not the way we would want to say neither of the women carried their purses with them. Is it okay? Yes, but it's much more informal. It's less value in a formal writing situation where we need to follow the rules strictly. so that we make sure that all of our grammar is correct. This uses several different things like their and them. Well, that's two plural pronouns for woman, when they should have matching pronouns like her and her, okay, to discuss women. I mean, that's just the differences between the usage of formal and informal. Let's look at another one. Every one of the contestants was instructed to place his scorecard on the table in front of him. That's actually supposed to be place. Sorry, place is the word. Every one of the contestants was instructed to place his scorecard on the table in front of him. Well, it's more formal, one, to use the masculine pronoun to describe contestants, to describe the scorecard, and to use him again. Now, why do we do that? Because in formal grammar, we typically will use the masculine when we're referring to specific people. Now, we use female or feminine pronouns when we refer to countries and to things of that nature, like the United States military lost one of her soldiers last night in such and such combat. We would use the word her to refer to a country because that is the formal way to do so. But when we're speaking about an individual, we will typically refer to a masculine pronoun. So in this particular case, we have his and him referring to contestants and referring to the scorecard. So we have and to his place on the table. So we have all of these things, and that's a very formal way. Now let's look at the informal way. We might text this, we might write this to our mothers, or in a letter or an email. Every one of the contestants was instructed to place their scorecards on the table in front of them. Well, it doesn't seem like that's a big change, but believe it or not, that's an extremely informal way to do it, because you're then opening yourself up not necessarily to a gender. You see, we have a neutral. We have a neuter pronoun there, and then we have another neuter pronoun there, when everyone would be normally described with a masculine pronoun. Now, and those are just informal ways to use these words. We've come to the end of English grammar, talking about the pronoun and the antecedent. I told you today would be a short lesson. In our next lesson, in our next class, we're going to begin the foundations of English composition. I'm very excited that we have finally gotten to this place where now we can take all these rules and parts of speech, and now we can start using them together, that we can begin composing and creating composition in English, so that you can then see how everything that we have learned up to this point will now be introducing you to English composition. I look forward to seeing you again real soon. God bless.